Number 9. LaWanda Brown. On May the 28th of 2018, Tony Brown was found on the floor of his Florida home in a pool of his own blood after being shot by his 57-year-old wife, LaWanda. The business director, also in his late 50s, had been shot in the back of the head following a minor dispute over a Google search. Tony and LaWanda owned a consulting agency together and had been working on a project. Investigators later revealed that the latter felt her partner had spoken to her in a mean tone of voice while expressing his dissatisfaction with her internet search methods. Enraged by his attitude, she subsequently shot him in the back of the head with a .38 caliber gun they owned. As he walked out of the room, LaWanda later claimed that seeing him walk away was the last thing she remembered, and her memory of what happened next became a blur. When officers arrived at their home, they found Tony alive but in critical condition and called to have him airlifted to a hospital. He received emergency surgery and was released a week after recovering. LaWanda was charged with attempted first-degree murder and taken into custody, where she was held on $500,000 bond. Today's featured fan shout-out is Instagram follower Del Von Slaughter. To appear in our next video, send us your pic, rocking the latest merch from theywillkillyou.com, and send it in to us on Instagram today. Number 8. Daniel Malone and Terry Thomas. On June the 14th of 2021, a woman named Ivana Jenkins was ambushed and murdered by two men following an argument at an Indiana gas station. Jenkins was standing in line inside the gas station when 19-year-old Daniel Malone and 23-year-old Terry Thomas walked in, visibly armed. They purposely cut in front of her in line, to which Jenkins took exception and reacted by saying that she wasn't afraid of their guns. The two men left the store and waited for her to exit. When she did, they approached her aggressively, and Malone slapped her in the face. Jenkins fought back and began to throw punches at the men. In an effort to defend herself, she fell to the ground in the process, at which point Thomas shot her. He fled the scene in a vehicle while Malone took off on foot, but the police had already been called. When an ambulance arrived at the station, Jenkins was rushed to a nearby hospital where she was pronounced dead. After analyzing the building's surveillance footage, police identified Thomas and Malone as their suspects. They also found a pendant at the crime scene that was traced back to Thomas, and which had likely been pulled off his neck by Jenkins in the struggle. Both men were ultimately taken into custody, and as of the latest updates on the case, pleaded not guilty to the murder charges. Number 7. Paul Akinyoye. Friends Paul Akinyoye and Jordan Wright got into a fight following a WhatsApp group chat dispute on April the 19th of 2017. What had started out as the two men trading insults eventually led to them challenging each other to a physical fight in southeast London. 19-year-old Wright showed up to the confrontation unarmed, while under the impression that it was a fist fight, but 20-year-old Akinyoye came with a knife. After an initial scuffle, Akinyoye stabbed Wright multiple times, and he succumbed to his injuries on the same day. Wright's mother, Catherine Alade, later revealed that her son's autism had rendered him unable to fully understand the dangers of a street altercation. Akinyoye was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 21 years. Number 6. Kevin Batchelor. On May the 23rd of 2020, friends Kevin Batchelor and George Allison got into an altercation at a barbecue in Havant, England. The row and brawl that ensued resulted in 26-year-old Batchelor killing the other man. Fellow partygoers later testified to seeing the pair getting along and even taking pictures together until a verbal dispute between them broke out in the kitchen of the home. That's when they started to physically attack each other, before Batchelor got hold of a carving knife and stabbed 21-year-old Allison through his upper left shoulder. The resulting wound was nearly 7 inches deep, and Allison suffered extreme blood loss, to which he succumbed shortly thereafter. Covered in blood, Batchelor fled the scene on a bicycle and rushed to his sister's home for assistance. There, 34-year-old Haley Batchelor and her friend Barry Baker helped Kevin dispose of the murder weapon, wash his clothes, and gave him a change of clothing and shoes to help him avoid getting arrested. Despite their efforts, he was taken into custody later that same night, subsequently maintaining that he'd acted in self-defense. Police had found traces of blood on the shoes he'd worn at the barbecue, and the carving knife he'd used to kill Allison was found several weeks later in a storm drain. On June the 4th of 2021, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 18 years served. Both Haley Batchelor and Barry Baker were found guilty of assisting an offender and were each sentenced to 3 years in prison. Number 5. Tonica Miller. An Indianapolis woman shot her boyfriend of 5 years in the face following an argument about cheating on May the 27th of 2022. Tonica Miller, aged 32, and 41-year-old Deshawn Roscoe shared an apartment together with their 2 young children. After putting their children to bed, they decided to go to a playground within their apartment complex to have intimate relations on a blanket. They were captured by surveillance cameras leaving their apartment at 12:50 a.m. Miller was carrying a handgun, which she later claimed to have brought for protection since it was dark outside. After having intimate relations, the couple got into an argument about Miller cheating on Roscoe, which prompted her to walk away and leave him behind at the playground. Surveillance video captured the woman returning to her apartment, only to make her way back to the playground just a minute later in her car. She exited the vehicle to let Roscoe get in the driver's seat. Still upset over the previous conversation, the man shoved her, and in retaliation, she hit him in the right shoulder. Miller still had the gun in her hand at the time, and it went off as she struck him, releasing a bullet directly into the man's cheek. Miller ran into her building to call the police and then returned outside to try to help her boyfriend by applying pressure to his gunshot wound. Unfortunately, when police arrived, they pronounced him dead at the scene. Miller was arrested and her 2 young children were taken by the Department of Child Services. She was charged with reckless homicide and 2 counts of neglect of a dependent. Number 4. Hannah Ryan Johal. On June the 14th of 2014, teenager Stanley Harrison died after being stabbed in the neck with a knife in Daventry, England. On the night of his murder, Harrison was picked up by his childhood friend, 18-year-old Hannah Ryan Johal, to carpool to a party together. Once the party was over, they returned to Johal's home with a 3rd friend, Reese Hamad, and continued drinking while they watched TV. The mood shifted when Harrison refused to give Johal a cigarette, leading to a verbal argument that escalated into a physical fight. Johal then went into the kitchen and retrieved an 8-inch kitchen knife to use against Harrison. Hamad intervened and tried to get his friends to stop fighting. In the scuffle, Johal fell to the floor, which gave Hamad a chance to kick the knife away from him before pushing Harrison towards the door, encouraging him to leave. As the teenager turned to exit, Johal, having regained his knife, charged him and stabbed him in the neck. Harrison sustained a severed blood vessel that led to him bleeding profusely as he stumbled and collapsed into the hallway. The police and emergency services were called, but Harrison died in the hospital the following day from complications associated with severe blood loss. Johal was arrested and charged with murder but denied that he'd intentionally stabbed his childhood friend. An investigation revealed that both Johal and Harrison were heavily inebriated and had traces of cocaine in their systems, which a judge determined had contributed to the fatal fight. Johal was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in jail. Number 3. Mason Trevor Toney. A pro-Trump construction worker was killed by his anti-government employee at a construction site after they'd gotten into a heated political argument on January the 20th of 2020. Mason Trevor Toney fatally stabbed his friend and boss, 28-year-old William Knight, with a pointed shovel before fleeing the scene in the latter's pickup truck. When Florida police arrived at the site, they found Knight's dead body, which had been partially covered with an American flag. Police were quickly able to track down Toney, which led to a pursuit that ultimately ended with him crashing the stolen pickup. He was taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder and was held without bond. Today's topic was requested by Asher Walker. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Warren Little. On January the 23rd of 2016, a British man strangled his wife with a phone cord following an argument over money. 52-year-old Warren Little was living in Mallorca, Spain, when his wife, Lisa Little, aged 49, came to visit him from London. Warren called the emergency services 2 days after the woman's arrival, and paramedics found her dead at his home. Little's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was asphyxia due to strangulation. Warren was arrested that same day and taken in for questioning. Investigators asked him directly if he'd strangled his wife with a mobile phone cable, to which he answered yes. However, just a day later, Warren's story changed as he told a judge in a hearing that Lisa had choked to death while they'd engaged in a sadomasochistic role play, which she'd allegedly suggested, and that her death had been completely accidental. The claim wasn't consistent with what he told the police on at least 2 different occasions. As part of a plea deal, he eventually confessed that he'd killed her following an alcohol-induced outburst of rage about her wanting money that he wouldn't give her. Prosecutors were seeking a 20-year prison sentence for a murder conviction, but his confession got him a lesser charge of homicide and 12 years in prison. The Littles' daughter, 21-year-old Demi Nicole, filed for a restraining order against her father that would prohibit him from coming within 19 miles of her and her young son for the next 22 years. She also told the court that her mother had been a victim of domestic violence at her father's hands and had sued him for about $180,000 in the past. Number 1. Eleanor Stern. On December the 12th of 2015, a Florida woman kicked a state police officer at a Deerfield Beach Department of Motor Vehicles after getting into a row with a department employee. Video shot by another DMV goer showed 31-year-old Eleanor Stern having a heated verbal argument with the unnamed employee at the counter. An officer was consequently called over to remove her from the building. Stern was seen on video kicking the officer, who then began to wrestle with her on the ground as she continued to attack him. He struggled to handcuff Stern as she thrashed uncontrollably on the ground. The enraged woman was able to get up and away for a moment as she screamed profanities and insults at the officer. He was eventually able to get a hold of her and remove her from the building. Stern was charged with resisting arrest but was released after posting a $100 bond. Thanks for watching. Would you rather never argue with your partner again, or be guaranteed to win every argument you'll ever have with them? Let us know in the comments section below.